All right.
Okay, I'd like to call the Capital Improvement Committee meeting to order for January 6th at 6:32 PM. First item on the agenda was to call to order. We just did that. Second one is approval of minutes, which you may have seen online and or it was in your packet if you happen to pick up your packet from Town Hall today.
I'll move to approve minutes from December 2nd.
You got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. Stephanie, second that. Any
yes,
discussion?
Steph Summers.
Any discussion, corrections of the minutes as presented for the December 2nd meeting? Going once, going twice? Okay, all in favor to approve the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I abstain since I wasn't there. I wasn't part.
They are, well, they're not kind of long, but there's a lot of stuff in here, so if you haven't had a chance to read the last meeting, to get caught up on kind of the existing projects and such, review those minutes. Next item on the agenda is present to speak. It's an opportunity for the public to say their 2 cents worth before the meeting. Does anybody like to say anything? Okay, going twice. Hearing none. The assessor submittal is item 4 on the agenda.
All right. So those of you who have your packet can see the assessor has asked for $30,000 in 22-23, so year 2, and then $27,000 in year 3, and that's for a reval which is due in 2023.
This is a pretty normal thing for the revaluation that we have to do periodically.
Yes.
Just to put a little bit of money aside. Little is a relative term. Put some money aside for that, so when it comes time to do the reval, we have some money to do that. So I think the plan was we're taking around figures 30 grand a year to set aside, and then we'll be ready to go.
Can I ask an historic question about this? I just wondered, have we discussed, and we probably have over the years, just like biting the bullet and grinding this 30,000 for 2 years running into the operating? Because it's like cost of doing business and it's state law and it's not really capital improvements. But if this
In my
is,
time it has, but I'm not opposed to that. I know Walter had suggested when he first started breaking it up into smaller amounts over, every year, because we know it's an ongoing item. But I don't know that in my tenure, that we've discussed putting in the operating budget. Christina, did that ever come up prior?
I don't know specifically, but I think the reason why it's not is just because then what do you do the next year? And you can't save it up. You
Right.
can't save it up for the year that you need it. So it would just make a bubble in the budget.
but what if you just do it, like when you need it, like 30,000 in 2020 or in fiscal year 23, 27,000 in fiscal year 24, and then the next year bring it down that amount,
Well, you almost have to just keep that going in perpetuity, because the next reval is coming after that.
Right, there's one every 5 years.
So you'd have to either take out 20% of your estimated cost per year out of your operating budget. But in this question for people smarter than me, if they had that money in their budget and didn't spend it, how do they carry it over?
They can't.
Don't.
That's what I thought.
That's the problem. It goes back into the general fund.
Yep.
But that's my point. Why can't you just budget it in the 2 years you need it and take it, flat it out in the other years?
Well, I think because we don't do a 5-year budget. So if we did, like, it could easily be forgotten about and so surprise somebody 4 years later, you know? I think that if it's in here, then at least it's on people's radar that it's coming down. And in theory, we plan, it's sort of, the CIP plan sort of is the plan to include it, but
Yeah.
but we don't reduce the other capital spending by $30,000. So
And
right.
trying to have those swings of, spending in round figures, I don't know what it is, $100,000 for the reval, to put that into a budget in 1 year. And like you said, you'd have a big swing of, tying up a whole lot of tax money in that 1 year to get the reval done. And then, yes, the other 4 years, you'd be to the good. But I think just taking the 20% a year for 5 years and park it away in a fund that doesn't go away, and then it's available to the assessor when they have to do the reval. Let's see.
Where's the money coming from?
So in this case, it would, well, whatever fund we designate at the end of this process. So it might be from the general reserve, it might be from 930. There are several different funding accounts. Donna, is there traditionally an account that we put this money to?
Or from.
Yes, we put it to the capital reserve, which is Fund 4.
Thank you.
So when you
I see
see,
what you're saying, Stephanie. You're saying just budget in the 2 fiscal years that we're asking for it.
Right.
And then it, I
And
think
if there's a question, like why is the budget going up 30,000 in this, in the assessor's budget, we say it's valuation.
right. And I can only imagine that at one point it was, to make it easier for planning and so that it didn't get cut from an operating budget in any way. And that's why it was in this plan. And that's some of why, so that there wasn't even a hole in the CIP plan when Walter suggested breaking it out so that there was every year you put some money into it. So it continuously stayed in the CIP plan.
and part of it is the presentation to the taxpayers that, hey, taxes just went up a lot this year as we're doing a reval. They won't remember that, the next 4 years, it's going to go back down again. They'll lose their mind about, oh my God, it went up $100,000. Why did my taxes go up this year to pay for that? And then they won't remember the next year that it's better. So if you just take a portion out each year to pay for that, does anybody know what the total cost of the reval is? Is that
Well, it says 57 and it's spread over 2 years. So it's no more than 30,000 a year, which to me doesn't sound like a deal buster with the taxpayer. It's an issue that Board of Finance has been discussing more. And, I don't want to upset anyone's apple cart if this is easier. And I understand Christina's argument that, hey, the CIP process makes it obvious to everyone that we're doing this, and this is coming. And that's a good thing, but just it kind of bothers me if there is a pot of money, which has frequently been around $500,000 every year in our 5-year plan. Why are we spending it on this when we could do actual capital improvements with
Yeah, I
that?
have to back that up. I have a fundamental problem with taking money that taxpayers said was for one use and then using it for something else. Is that the situation here?
No,
No,
it's definitely used for the reval process. The money is set aside there. I think it's because there was a mechanism to plan. And so for planning purposes, this was where we would plan because we don't do a multi-year budget.
Yeah.
with a few exceptions, the annual budgets, anything unspent goes back to the general fund. So it's not set aside for the reval. If you just did it on your regular budget. Going through CIP allows us to hold it into the capital reserve, I believe Donna said, and carry it over from year to year as needed, so to make sure there's enough money when the time comes to spend for the reval.
Well, maybe that's why we did it then.
Yeah. So, Stephanie, you're correct. It is not a capital project. There's nothing, you don't get a truck out of the deal or, some physical object that you went out and bought, which, kind of defeats the purpose of, in my mind, a capital project. but it's the only way to even out the tax expenses for something you know is coming and to be able to carry it over from year to year.
Okay.
I mean, one thing that we possibly could do is create a special fund for it that the assessor, it would be, you know, whatever doesn't get spent in the assessor's budget each year could, you know, start building up in that special fund. But I don't know if that's
I don't know that that's much
why we
different.
don't have that.
Donna, what are the rules for creating special funds for stuff like
Requires
this?
Board of Finance approval to create a new fund.
We'll throw it back to the Board of Finance members if they want to segregate, instead of having it in capital reserve and have them remember, hey, there's, you know, an extra 30 grand in this year for, so we got to save till next year. If you wanted to put it in a separate fund just for the reval, it's a little clearer to everybody where that money's set aside for, and you know it's only going to be used for the reval.
Okay.
And the cost is the cost. The requirement is there to do it. We got to hold on to the money to be able to do it. So Board of Finance wants to park it in a fund, that's fine as well.
Do we need a motion to make that request?
No, so what we're an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen. So we go through all this and we try to sort it out and make a recommendations as best we can, especially for the year one expenses, and hopefully in years 2 through 5 as well. The selectmen then take that and they can make changes as they see fit and pass it along to the Board of Finance. Board of Finance hopefully approves it at some point. They can, I believe, change it as well. And then in a normal year, it goes to a town meeting and then part of the referendum in the budget process. So there's multiple layers of, you know, we're just a starting point of this. Saying we've reviewed all these projects. These are the ones we think we want to fund from these funding sources, and we pass along the recommendation. In terms of the CIP committee, we typically don't vote on these when first presented. We kind of soak them all in because we have to juggle all of them in the air to see which ones we're going to keep and which ones are going to get pushed out or occasionally deleted. So the idea is to go through these as quick as we can tonight and for the subsequent weeks. And when everybody's done presenting, then we start to sort through them and go, okay, let's delete this, let's move this, let's say no to this, let's say yes to this. And if we say yes, we need to identify a funding source. There's some funds that come from the state, the local capital improvement, I think it's called LOCIP, but that has rules of what you can and can't fund on it. And there's a few other little funds that come in that way, as well as taxpayer money. I mean, it's all taxpayer money, but in terms of the source, some is local tax collection, some are some funds from the state, some are revenue from the ambulance billing, pays for a bunch of stuff, but that has some rules attached to it as well. So
Well,
they're all good questions. Keep them coming, and it does take. I mean, I've only done this for a few years, and I reach out for help to anybody I can ask a question to. Why are we doing this, and what are the rules to that, and kind of get through it all together.
I can bring it up at Board of Finance.
It would make it a little clearer in the books that, hey, this is reval money. I guess that's the only advantage to it. If you knew that it was in capital reserve anyways, there's no difference. You're just kind of parking it in a numbered account that's saying this is for reval. And then you could, you know.
I just want to be sure that, you know, Erica and you guys don't have a major objection to the idea of discussing it.
As long as we have the money. Where it comes in at the end of the day, it's going to come from the same pool of money. How it's handled, I'll leave to the financial powers that be. But yeah, as long as the funding is available when we have to do our 5-year reval.
Any other questions on the assessor submittal? Going once, going twice? All right, we'll turn it over to the Board of Selectmen for their
All
presentation.
right, so I'm going to start with project that's titled South Willington Lot Sip Design, and Mike D'Amato is going to speak to this project. So for those that don't have your packet, we're asking for $22,000 in year one, which is 21-22, to offset an almost $1 million project from state funds.
Okay, so if anybody has questions about what I have submitted or as I'm going through, just stop me. But the long and short of it is back in the spring, early summer, we submitted a grant to the Capital Region Council of Governments for a local transportation capital improvement project that was a competitive grant. It's different than a lot of people hear low SIP. This is lot SIP. There's a T in there. It's for transportation related projects, bridges, sidewalks, things that deal specifically with transportation. And there are requirements for what roads qualify and what areas can actually be eligible for these funds. We got together in town hall and kind of did a bit of a brainstorm to see what projects and things that we kind of had would be eligible, and ultimately landed on the South Willington Village area and site and safety improvements in that part of town. The grant will facilitate pedestrian and vehicular safety improvements from an area that's roughly just shy of 2,000 feet between the school headed towards the mill. It will involve sidewalk reconstruction and installation, adding crosswalks, pedestrian islands to make crossing the street by the school safe, with some landscaping and what are referred to as rapid flashing beacons, which basically let you know as you're approaching there's someone in the road. It will create an ADA accessible access from the crossing to the parking lot at the school, because currently there is no accessible access from the school in front to the parking lot. And then we'll also create a crosswalk in front of the church as you head towards the mill, and then pick up and meet with sidewalks that are already existing as you approach the mill. So we were shortlisted, the grant was approved, the funds are available, but the grant program does not cover design. So the $20,000 is the $22,000 is to cover the design, which we will go out to bid for. And we were able to get the money, the amount down, because I was able to negotiate with DOT so that they actually provided their survey work to us, which we were able to incorporate into the plans, which will cut down on the amount of survey we have to do. So we were able to save some money there. And I can answer specific questions if you have them about the project, but I'll leave it there for now.
How far to the north is the sidewalk project included? More specifically, does it go up to including both of the mill buildings?
It goes, let me pull up the plan.
You have them, I just have the paper for Mike. It goes up.
Reason I asked that,
there.
Well, yeah,
Christina may remember there was potential threatened lawsuits a few years ago that we demand you come and fix the sidewalk. And there was long discussions about who owned the sidewalks, and is the mill responsible, is the town responsible? And fortunately, well, for better or for worse, that discussion died away. But the issue is somewhat still there of where those sidewalks are in poor condition the further north you get, and the people crossing from the parking lot over to the mill is in the same situation or worse than what the school and the church is.
Yeah. So if it would be helpful, I'm happy to share my screen and give you a quick overview of the concept plans. there are a couple of reasons why we didn't go farther. Number one, we were trying to get the biggest bang for our buck, and putting sidewalks in that don't exist felt like a better use of the funds than repairing sidewalks that were there. It is a state road, so I don't know if that question has been solved, but I know that DOT does have this area on their radar for improvements, which is why they were willing to give me the line work for their surveys, because this is going to fix an area of roadway that they feel is an issue. The other reason why is because we are maxed out at the grant maximum. We can't, any more project would require more funds, and we're at the max we can ask for, the max award. So it would come out of the town's budget if we had to do more. The only thing I would suggest is if we got to a point where we were able to do more with less, and we went to CROG and said, hey, we have money left in the budget, we'd like to reconstruct some sidewalks, they would be fine with that. So it doesn't mean that it's out of the question. But let me pull up these plans. Will I be able to share? Do I need to ask?
I can allow that. You should be able to.
Christina, didn't that come up? I think even the CIP.
There was a
doing
committee.
Sidewalks by the mill.
Yeah, there was a whole committee. And the sidewalks were, I think what was discovered was the sidewalks were initially built by the Hall Foundation when they built the mill. So the DOT doesn't feel like they own the sidewalk, and the town doesn't feel like we own the sidewalk, but neither does the property owner. So it's a big question, and it is deteriorating. It's
Pretty bad.
I haven't been there in a couple of years, but it was already bad. So we've had it in the CIP plan to actually repair that one section, and it's been pushed out. But yeah, there's a whole file on it.
Okay. All right, let me just see here. I'm trying to get it separated so that we can, I can show you both. All right.
I assume state DOT has to approve this as well, considering it's their roadway.
So this has gone through the first, it went through review by CROG, it was endorsed, it went to DOT, and we received comments from DOT. CROG's engineering, consulting engineer did a review, which we have those comments. So everything is there. The money is sitting, waiting with our name on it. So what we need to do is respond to the comments and then submit our response to the comments to CROG. Everything will be basically verified, and then we will get a commitment to fund, which then we can bid the project. And then when we have the design taken care of, we bid the contract for construction, and then we get a commitment to basically pay from CROG. This is not a project that will require the town to front the 800 grand and then ask for reimbursement. The money is already available. So I'm not asking later for you to, oh, by the way, set aside, $750,000 so that we can front this. It's not that type of grant program. And so with that, I'm gonna.
Yeah, and there were some pretty significant parameters on what the lots of funds could be used for, because one of the first things I thought of were our road projects that have been on the books for years that fall into this financial category, and they did not qualify. So that was certainly disappointing. So we were trying to find ways to make improvements that fit into the parameters of the grant. And we were hoping to get some sidewalks that would get us from Hall School to Hall's Pond. We used that facility, both of those facilities, for our summer camp, and it would make things safer. So we were able to adjust some of the sidewalks for that, but we weren't able to get straight from one to the other.
Okay, I'm gonna share now. Oh, I can't. Erica, can you let me share? And so I'm sure you've heard, obviously, the superintendent has had a lot of trouble with vehicles flying by the school. And, there are such great sight lines in that areas that people really move. So this will hopefully, there we go. Okay. Can you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So on the left-hand side is the, where you're seeing the school. And so you'll see here, I don't know if you can see my, my cursor or not, but there will be, we're gonna basically fix the sidewalk here to get it aligned, install a cross here, a crosswalk here. And then these are islands, which basically create a place of refuge. If somebody is trying to cross the street and someone is moving quickly or they're elderly and they need a minute, this is a protected spot where they can stand and kind of catch their bearings if they can't make it all the way across. There are no crosswalks in the area here. And yeah, as Erica mentioned, the summer camp walks these roads to go to the pond, which is also a concern. So this will all be fixed. There will be sidewalks installed here so that if somebody needs to cross, they can cross on a crosswalk, use a sidewalk and get this way. So now if we jump to the right side of the screen, and I will expand that. This is in front of the church. Here's the parking lot. There will be a crosswalk here and then an island as well. And then the sidewalk will extend this way. The slope here is very steep and currently creates some issues with access and visibility. So there's a little bit of a retaining wall that will be included. There will also be a crosswalk here, which will connect with the existing sidewalks and then allow them to basically get across. And then there's a sidewalk here. So the inconsistencies that exist now, where people are going from one side of the street, then there's a sidewalk on another side of the street, there's no crossings, coupled with the fact that we have a major community facility that has no ADA access when crossing a road. The speeds are high. There have been a few accidents that we were able to pull from the crash data that we found, is why we felt this was a good project.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw out my opinion. I think, to spend 22 grand to get roughly 800,000 is a pretty good bang for your buck.
Yeah, to say the least.
And I think Mike was saying the state was already planning some work in front of Hall School. So we're able to, utilize some of the work that they're already doing, which cuts that 22,000 from where it was.
It doesn't have anything, it doesn't include the crosswalk in front of the mill, does it?
It does not at this point in time, like I said, because we have specific parameters for how we have to price it. And so what we ran into is our first request was 1.2 million. And they said, you've got to reduce it. So we adjusted and did some reductions and tweaked some things. If we have, but a lot of there's some contingencies built in. There's other things that we have to incorporate. So if we get to the end of the project and we find that we have had some savings, I do know that other places have gone back and said, hey, we want to do work that's still within the scope of the grant and the project's intent, and that has been possible. So it doesn't mean we wouldn't try, but we really. And we've walked this area, and if you've ever been down there, the sidewalks that are there in these sections are just terrible. Like we've talked about, they're too small. You could never use them if you were in a wheelchair or with a stroller. And so we want people to be safe. And so we're trying to do everything so that they will be. Every improvement that we're going to make from the start to finish of the total project scope will be ADA compliant. So even though you can't see the ramps and the tactile pads, all that will be completely incorporated. We're also going to fix a little bit of the access in front of the school because the sidewalks are a bit, they kind of move around. And so we're going to try to pull them off the road so that people aren't getting out and walking right along the roadway. If we can pull them back a little bit and create a bit of a buffer, there'll be some safety there so that people aren't right on the side as cars are pulling by.
And doing the sidewalk by Village Street's important because the residents of the assisted living facility there frequently walk down the road to Extra Mart and such. And between Village Street and the church, there's no sidewalk there, I believe. That's where Mike talked about that retaining wall to push that back a bit so they can not have to walk out in the road to get down to the section of sidewalk that does exist.
There was that, and also if the camp went up 32 instead of turning on Penny Hill and then that back road, that they would have sidewalk all the way to Village Street there. Was another reason.
So, any other comments about this project?
So one of the other things Mike and I were talking about is that the timing of the grant may be such that we need the funds before July 1. So while this is the appropriate place to bring this, if timing were perfect and we don't want to circumvent that process, those of you who are on Board of Finance will probably hear us talk about a request for this sooner at Board of Finance. And Mike, if you want to talk to why we need it before July 1.
Yeah, so basically, as she mentioned, the project was approved for this fiscal year. Now, the CROG is not asking us to complete it within this fiscal year, but once we get a response pulled together where we have the plans, they're going to ask us to execute the next step within a certain time frame. They're going to be flexible, obviously, because of COVID and everything else going on. Things are just a little bit more complicated. But I had the conversation with them sort of informally and didn't get anything. I don't have anything in writing that says you'll lose it. But I don't know how comfortable they are with sort of waiting around with almost $1 million sitting in an account to not know what will happen until July. I mean, it will be a number of months before we have an approved plan for the town. And I think there's concern that we won't know until May or June if this is even an approved project. I think if it's approved and we had to wait a month or two afterwards would be fine, but there's 5 months that could go by before we know, and the answer could be no. And I think there were triple the number of projects that applied that they were able to approve. We were only one of 2 towns within the rural set aside to be considered for funding. So they very much want to move on to the next town if this is not going to be a fit for Willington. As far as I can tell, we've never been the recipient of a LOTSIP grant or a CROG grant. And now that they've shown us the love, I want to keep the ball rolling and let them know that we're appreciative. So yeah, if we were able to get that this fiscal year and get the ball rolling, it would probably save us a year on the project, because if we wait till July to get a hopefully yes, it's going to set us back a construction season.
Another concern is that the state has a budget deficit this year. And if there are any money sitting out there like this that haven't been allocated, they're going to take it back. So the sooner you can grab a commitment on this, the better.
That is a very good point.
Yeah. So I guess it may go to Board of Finance sooner than later. The question is, do they have a little stash of money floating around that could fund this now? And
I think that it would easily be found for something like this. I'm not committing, of course, for anyone else, but
It's hard to
it's
throw
kind of,
away
it's
$100,000.
crazy to let this go. So if Mike's informed concern is that, and Orlando's issue is, I would think, why would we mess around with this?
yeah,
Because it's really been needed for a long time.
Mhm.
It would be great to do this, and it's big on economic development's list too. So
now would this require some sort of town meeting if Board of Finance did find the money somewhere?
Yes.
And how did
Well, and
Yes.
so we are working on, I ordered some equipment so we can start working on a hybrid town meeting. In the meantime, if we had to, we could do an in-person in the very cold outdoors. It's still an option, but we are in the works of getting new setup so that we could hopefully have a hybrid town meeting with a very small number of people in person and the rest via virtual, and then go through that process. But yeah, we'd have to have a town meeting for sure. So And we still have another item out there for town meeting, so we put them together and do this. But we wanted to make sure we brought it here. If the Board of Finance says no, and it's on the radar here, this is where it would be if timing weren't an issue. But we hate to see funds given to us and then because we didn't act in their time frame, yanked away would be horrible.
Yeah, I'd recommend getting on the Board of Finance agenda as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And
So they have a meeting next week, and that's our plan.
for two parts.
I
At
think
one,
it's the 21st, actually. It's not next week, it's the week after that. You've got plenty of time.
Well, you know why? Because I put it on the third Friday, not the third Thursday. And next week is the third Friday.
So one part is, identifying a funding source,
Mhm.
some cash that we have now, and the other is the mechanism to get it approved, whatever way it needs to for town meeting kind of thing, and then you end up with your money. And if it doesn't fly, well, we're plan B, I guess.
Nice work, whoever went after this grant.
This was a real team effort. So the lot zip came up, and again, I first thought of our road projects and thought, how does this fly? And then you read the lot zip manual and the parameters bring your projects down to this. So between Troy, Mike, Phil, myself, and Maureen, our then Parks and Rec director, sat down to try to find something that fit into that scope that would benefit the town the most. And so, I imagine those islands will be similar to some of the things you've seen going in Thailand on the 195 area around their green. While DOT may not love them for plowing purposes, they certainly slow you down a bit. So that's crucial there. I think we know speeding is a huge concern. So, but Mike has, since we got the ball rolling and met with CROG, and they were happy to hear from us and excited. This started with in-person meetings back in probably January. And Mike has really taken the lead on this, so kudos to him. All right, Mike has to leave us for another meeting, so we won't be
Yep.
upset
Okay.
if he has to go.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. And if you have any questions, reach out. And so we'll look to go to the Board of Finance on, you said the 21st?
21st, 2-3.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. All right, next project, Erica?
So the next project is, again, one that was originally, you've seen this since December of 2018, and that's pouring a concrete floor with a sump and a dehumidifier in the basement. This is a dirt basement here in the town office building. It has been a source of molds, not once, but now twice. We are working on mitigation of the current issue in the dirt portion, as well as some documents that have been affected. The quote we had was from 2018 when we first submitted. So we've kind of adjusted the funds for inflation at this point. This is an item that I brought to the Board of Finance in December because I think it's something we need to move on sooner, but we had already had it in our packet for CIP. So I'm still leaving it here, but we're going to try to move on this sooner rather than later. We know mold is an issue, and the fact that we have that dirt floor is creating the mold issue in the basement. So.
No, the records being affected are they in cardboard boxes?
Yep, they're banker's boxes.
Might have suggested going to Home Depot and getting the
Well,
plastic
we can't do
one.
anything with them until the mold.
Well, yeah, I know you have to fix the.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole
the
new
problem
plan.
now, but
I can tell
even
you-
after you have a concrete floor,
Oh, yeah,
cardboard
This
boxes probably is not the way to go.
for sure. But that's what they've been stored in for, I don't know how many years. And so Mike, they're land use documents, and we believe they're documents that have a lifetime retention. So we're working with the state library on the document portion of that, that part of it. And so to get them mitigated, this may never make this room adequate for storing and preserving documents. This will help with the mold that's created there, but I don't know that that particular area of this building is ever going to be adequate for record storage, record retention. We don't have much more room in the attic, and the weight there is a concern, and we've worked on cleaning that out. But they definitely have to go on something other than cardboard boxes, but it's a stone foundation. So there, I don't know that it's ever going to be right for record keeping, but we know we need to do something to mitigate the mold that has spread throughout that area. So
Have you guys checked the Department of Administrative Services to see if you can get money from them? Because I know they have money out there for schools for emergency remediation of mold in schools. I don't know if they have it for municipalities, but it could be. I could check if you want. It could be you can go to them and get them to fund it.
that would be wonderful.
I'll check.
Yeah, let's touch base on that. I know, I just made myself a note. So again, it's here. It had been in the plan. We had put it on year one last year. It's one of those things that was pushed off because of COVID. If I knew then what I know now, I would not have let that happen. I don't think it would have alleviated the mold in the boxes. I think it was probably already growing there until someone needed to get to them, is when we discovered how bad it was. So we're looking at we're asking for $30,638 dollars in year one.
So Erica, does that mean it would be more expensive than that?
It could be. We went to, if you recall, Stephanie, in December, I came to Board of Finance, Troy and I did, asking for more funds. We used the quote we had from there. We're still working on getting folks to come out here and quote the entire job, and it has not been an easy task. So Troy has met with one contractor, and that's just for the concrete portion. That wouldn't be any of the other work. And we're not sure if the holidays are what are getting folks not to respond, or what that is. But I think you have one more vendor coming out. We haven't had any luck with anyone on the state vendor list.
Have you looked at having it stored off-site? There are companies out there you can pay to do this for you, and I imagine it'd be a lot less than $30,000 a year.
I'm sorry, Orlando, I didn't hear all of what you said.
Yeah, the company. Have you considered storing the records off-site? There are companies that you can pay, and they will just take the records for you and put them someplace where they're safe. And
so that may be an issue, but first we have to mitigate the mold that's on the documents, and this dollar amount doesn't even handle that. That was about $28,000 was the first quote we got for that, for mitigating all of the mold. So we can't move the mold to a new site before we mitigate it. We know the documents have mold on them. But yes, offsite may be where we have to go to spend funds regularly. But it's not just the documents that the mold is affecting. We did have one air quality test. Our insurance has asked us to do another with a different company. And so we have, and it's shown mold outside of just that room. So, and we know that mold is everywhere. It's what kind of mold and how it affects people. So that's of some concern. So mitigating the mold would be what this would help do, and prevent hopefully another large mold issue. But yes, I don't think documents in that building, in that part of this building, are going to make it going forward. I'm not in favor of putting them back there.
So this project would cover the concrete, pouring the concrete floor, and a dehumidifier and sump pump.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, this quote is older, and we just adjusted the price. We are working on new quotes, but really are having difficulty getting someone out to give us an estimate on what it would cost. And I think we've talked about this a little bit, and I know the superintendent has too. Folks are hesitant to come out and get give a quote out, a job that then they're not going to get. It's costly for them as well, labor intensive. So again, this is something else you may see me ask at the Board of Finance, but it was already in our packet. It had been a CIP project before, so we'll leave it here in the meantime. All right. Any other questions on that project? All right. The next is carpet and flooring replacement in various areas of the town office building, including the town clerk's office, the assessor's office, the superintendent's office, and that would be replacement of carpet. And then new flooring in the land use area. And the land use area has some significant areas where tiles are broken, raised. We believe at one point there had been, it was before my time, some water damage done in there. And you can tell from where it's being raised. And the contractor that came out to quote what the replacement would be before he would commit to anything, he gave us a quote reluctantly because you'd need to do a moisture test in that area. So your documents are asking for one price. We'd need to add at least an additional $750 for the moisture test. That wasn't added into that calculation. I apologize for that. So we're asking for $17,472.20 plus the $750 for the moisture test. And that would be replacing, again, the carpet, town clerk and assessor's wing, the superintendent's office, and then that flooring. It would not include the vault. And the carpet on the selectmen and revenue side was done in 2016. So this would just be the rest of the building, and it is certainly old and in need of some replacement.
And is some of it tile, or is it carpet for carpet, or are some of them
It's
your?
carpet for carpet. The only place that was not carpet is the land use office. And that quote is for vinyl plank flooring. And the rest would be carpet for carpet. And we'd have to move everything ourselves. Nobody seems to do the moving for you. I believe that was the last time when this side was done too. Is that correct, Christina? We have to move everything ourselves. Yeah.
Yep.
It's unusual to get them to do it, but it's carpet for carpet, not going for anything fancy. And instead of those tiles, it would just be a vinyl plank in land use. And I wish Mike were still on. He could talk to how wonderful that floor is. We actually had to take a couple that were chipping pretty bad and remove them and kind of mark them hazardous down there so that no one tripped over them.
All righty, any other questions on this one, or we can move to the next? One place?
So the next one is a big ask, and it's something brand new. It's the first request for this, and it's for audiovisual equipment for remote meetings. So what COVID has done is pushed all of our in-person meetings to this new virtual world. I think it's going to be a while before we can get back to full in-person meetings. And even when we do, we've made ourselves pretty accessible to residents in a manner that they haven't been accustomed to before. And you'll see in a lot of other towns, they have the ability to watch meetings live or recorded, and we haven't had that ability. So I think it's important that we still continue to bring the meetings of the town to our residents in this new capacity. I was able to obtain, I alluded to earlier, some audio visual equipment, including a monitor, microphone, camera with COVID funds through the coronavirus relief fund. And that was to just over $15,000. And so we should be receiving that equipment soon. This would add on to that, and it would actually equip the upstairs room for most of our meetings instead of the downstairs room. But it would allow us to broadcast the room, see all the folks at the table. There would eventually be microphones. And I apologize with the holidays. They haven't been able to give me all of the documents, but did give me the estimated cost. So I don't have all the documents to share with you. But it would be, this is our largest by CIP is our largest board, and so it would be able to equip with microphone and wireless capabilities for up to 10 board or commission members. So you would be able to hear them. Now we're each sitting in front of a computer with a small microphone in front of us. This will put us in the room with a cart, and the cart is portable. So if we did need to take it downstairs, we could roll it down the ramp and outside, and the monitor would be on that. And this would allow for, there'd be, again, microphones downstairs, an AV cabinet. It does not include the cart. The monitor would be on the monitor and the camera, because those are coming in the first portion. So making sure we're ADA compliant, and now with new COVID rules and not sharing of microphones and such, it would allow for those individual microphones, which means more wireless channels, which made the cost go up a little more than I would like or had anticipated. So we're asking for $33,000 to expand on what we're going to be able to start with.
So you mentioned real-time meetings, but it really, I mean, that the people could see it in real,
Yes.
real time. Is that possible with this plan?
And yes, and be able to record our meetings. Yes.
Okay.
The federal government just came out with a second round of COVID funding.
Mhm.
I don't know if there are any more CRF funds. Do you know, Erica?
No, there is no money for towns and cities in this new stimulus. Very
Okay.
disappointing.
Yeah. The other thing you might consider holding off is that the legislature may approve, I'm completely speculating, that the legislature may approve some of the money to towns for this kind of thing in this session, considering just, how much it's going on. Or we can even get, one of our senator or representative to put up a bill.
Yes.
I think you get a lot of support for it.
Yeah, we were really hoping that there would be some federal funds. Once again, we used these right down to the wire, down to December 30th. I am curious to see if a new administration will see the fact that, towns and cities need funds for various things, and there might be some more funds in there. Donna, maybe you can answer this question. If we were to approve this in CIP and we were to get funds, it would just be refund allocated back to the budget line item it came from, correct?
So if we put money into CIP that we didn't need because we had another source of funding,
Right.
then
If we spent it, let's say it went through CIP and we already spent it, and then we get the funds are available in that time, it would be the same as we're handling right now, correct? The revenue would go back to
in theory, yes.
Uh-oh.
it's all speculation. So it depends on what fiscal year the monies come in and the monies are spent in. And I think that's more the concern, correct, Donna?
Yes.
Yeah. So if we knew before this process, we're through the budget season, we could, pull this request and not ask taxpayers to fund this. But oftentimes, the funds we're using, we would put up the funds and then they would be reimbursed with these funds. So we would still need to put up funds in some sort, but if they could be reimbursed back to the town from those potentially COVID relief funds, we would. I was
So
hoping the whole thing would fit into the $17,000 that we had left, but it didn't. So I purchased what we could out of the project.
how would you rank this project? I noticed you didn't, but I figured you had a thought about it.
Oh, I would, I'd rank it as a priority. It is certainly building off of what we've already purchased and it is coming. And again, I don't foresee us being in a full in-person world probably until next fall or next winter. So I think it's important that we have the ability to do that. And when we do, I think it's important to continue to share information with our towns. And it's time to come back, come into this into 2021 in a new capacity, and folks are watching, our meetings in a way they were never able to do before. And I think that's important. We always say we want them to participate in the process and to hear and understand what's going on, but we make it very difficult for them. So this has kind of opened our eyes to maybe some things we wanted to do, and now we've been forced to do it. But it'll be hard to pull back, and suddenly folks have been able to see our meetings at home when maybe they couldn't get out for whether it be medical reasons or childcare reasons, and go, well, okay, you got to go back and just read the minutes, and that's the only way you can participate in the process again. So.
Would this equipment be available to the public? And the reason I ask is because the legislature is going to allow online testimony. Whereas in the past, you had to go to the legislature and you had to sit there for hours, and it was a real mess, which discouraged everyone. And because of the situation this time, they're going to loosen things up. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen yet, but it could be that individuals could submit a video or some sort of digital testimony. Given some people may not have that kind of equipment at home or may not know how to work it, could this equipment be made available to them? They could come into the public, to town hall and put this together to submit to the legislature.
Potentially. That's certainly something we could look at, as long as it weren't being used for one of our meetings, but I think it's something we could talk about. I don't see why we couldn't at least look into the possibility of that. It would mean staffing of someone to be able to, monitor its usage and be available for those things. But I think it's certainly something we could discuss. Absolutely. I'm not opposed to that at all. Any more questions on this one, or can I move on? Sorry, I was waiting for Stuart.
Oh, no, I was looking at the
Okay.
next subject already.
All right. So the next and last project for this year, I could come up with plenty more. I'm sure you all know there's many, many things in this building that could use some work. I tried to really prioritize, knowing that finances are going to be a concern this year. The security and fire system monitoring is currently done by TN, Talon County Mutual Aid, and that we were made aware that they are going to stop monitoring of security and fire alarm systems. We were able, and it was supposed to end on December 31st, we were able to extend all of our contracts to June 30 so that we could look at everything together. So some contracts ended, whether it be the garage or the senior center or the library or the town office building at different times. So they've agreed to go through June 30 with all of our security monitoring, and then we need to find a new monitoring company. And with that, we kind of knew was going to could mean, depending on who you go with, new systems, because a lot of the systems that we have are proprietary. And so companies won't come in and work off of someone else's system. And so they'll want to replace some of the panels. So the project you see in front of you is asking for, in year one, $14,000, almost $386 for new panels and not the monitoring. The entire packet, if you have the packet, it shows you the fees for monitoring. We're including those in our operating budgets because that's where those fees were before, although they're an increase and we knew we were getting a good deal at TN. It'll be hard pressed to find $250 annually anywhere else. So when we went out and asked, although the Board of Selectmen isn't responsible for all of these, I thought it best to look at all of the systems that we knew were going to need monitoring, and some had asked us if we would include them, and whether we asked for them ourselves or they asked for them in a separate CIP project, could or not put them under the threshold. So this a dollar amount includes the Public Works garage, the town office building, the senior center, the library, Hall School, Center School, Willington 1, on River Road closer to Route 84, and then the South Station across from Lion Manor, no, Chase, High Chase. And you can see in the detail, some of the pads will be replaced and kept fire panel and security panel separate. Some would be combination panels. They will include virtual keypads so that they could be armed or disarmed from home from a wireless device, which Troy might agree would be nice when someone calls him and says, I forgot to arm the building, and everybody is long gone. And he is to hike it back here. So 14,000, just over 14,000 would cover the cost of those replacements. And then the monitoring on each, there's a fee for the virtual keypad, and then the monitoring for either a combination or separate fire and burglary, which we paid now. We paid $250 for fire and $250 for burglary. Intrusion, depending on where they are, they're going to go up significant. So those of you on Board of Finance will be hearing those new numbers. But this would replace the panels.
Was there any price savings by bundling these together?
I don't believe so. I didn't see any. That's why we first went in on them together, hoping that if, you know, we offered more, it would be a better price. And so.
Is this specific to the school or the town?
So this is a town-wide project, not just school. So the burglary and the fire alarms would be at the Public Works garage. We have separate here at the town hall, senior center, library, each school, and then the fire station.
It would
So
also,
The reason I ask, and I bring up the state again, there's state money for security for schools. You might be able to dip into that.
I think that Phil couldn't get security funding for this portion of it because we talked about that. I know he has security grant funds, but it wasn't going to cover this. And we need to find a new monitoring system. And so in order for them to do the monitoring, they needed to replace the panel. And you can see, again, if you, I apologize for those that don't have their packet, individually in buildings, they're anywhere from, you know, $1,200 to $3,600 per building. So not extraordinary costs. We bundled them together in one project and that met the threshold at CIP. And certainly I would say an improvement, a capital improvement, but a necessary item.
So when they, what goes into the monitoring? Do they just like look at screens or what, or listen for alarms, or
Yeah,
how much?
the way the central station alarm systems work is there's a dispatcher there, and something beeps in front of them. Go, hey, there's a motion sensor at the town hall just went off, and they have records on who the key holders are, so they would attempt to notify the key holder in a personal case, it'd be a homeowner, so to speak, of, hey, your alarm just went off. And all of a sudden, depending on the type of alarm that went off, they would call, the state police for any, entry issues and things like that. And if it's, smoke or fire, they would call the TN, the regional dispatch center, to send the appropriate fire apparatus to something like that.
So we've gotten some in the past where, it's 9 o'clock at night and the alarm downstairs goes off, and they'll contact theirs, they kind of go in order, usually Troy and then myself, and we'll, determine, they'll say Troop C, well, we've contacted Troop C, they'll meet you there and you'll get here, and the troop is here, and they'll go through the building to make sure it was safe. In some cases, we found that someone was leaving a meeting and set it off while they were here, and all was good, but they're monitoring that alarm system for us. And so, I mean, it does work.
Thanks.
Yeah. Troy gets the early morning wake up call sometimes.
While there doesn't appear to be a price savings to bundle them, Willington Hill Fire Department's probably in the same boat with their alarm system.
I guess I wasn't aware they had one. I know Willington one asked us if we would, if we were looking into it, and we would inquire on their behalf. So William.
And the other one, which I know is always a questionable ownership issue, is the bungalows at senior housing. Right now, they're paying for 2 phone lines per building because they're required to have a double notification system times 4 buildings. So they have a whole pile of phone lines they're having to pay for to send their signal out. And I know I've spoken with some people up there that we're hoping trying to combine that into some different system. And I noticed that this company here was doing a lot with cellular notifications as opposed to leased telephone lines. I know they're kind of on their own as well, but we should probably just mention it to them.
Does TN monitor their alarms?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's 4 buildings, 4 alarm panels with total of 8 phone lines. And it's the monthly charge on the phone lines is ultimately what's the biggest expense there.
And I think Troy, I know when you met with him, we talked about the phone lines, and I think the senior center they still had phone line in there.
I do believe so, yes.
It may not have been them. I know one of them, but they addressed the way they can handle each one here. And each is different depending on the system they had set up. Certainly the systems at the senior center and the library are much newer than some of our older buildings. So they're, the devices they would put in there were,
Yeah.
you know,
It isn't just the devices, depending on the occupancy of the building,
Mhm.
requires 1 or more phone lines. So in case one phone line was out of service for whatever reason, it still had an alternate path to be able to dial out. And the cellular dialing, which is kind of a new thing, may get around that, but the phone company charges, not a cheap fee per month per phone line. So I know senior housing was looking for alternatives to try to do that. So we may at least want to include them in the
Share this
discussion.
with Housing Authority, at least for Button Hill. Sure.
Okay, that's all I have on the fire alarm. Anybody else?
Right, that's all I have.
So Troy, if you want to unmute, I think you're next, and bring us down your path of all the goodies you want.
All right, where do you want to start?
One thing I thought of was, let's start with the vehicles and try to do the vehicles as a whole. I
Okay.
know it's always hard to wrap our head around of how many you have, what age you have, and which one's replacing what, because sometimes it's musical chairs with this one's going to go over there, being the new one will go here, and then we can get into the road projects separately.
All right, well, one thing I gotta apologize because I made a mistake on the 2012 International dump truck. The price, I messed up on that, so that's not the right price on that. So we'll start with that one. That's Todd's truck. It's
That's you said 2012 International?
Yeah, this is a 2012 International. This is, Todd's truck. It's due to be replaced next year. Currently, right now, as of July, we've put $22,000 into that truck with some motor work.
Have we put money since July?
Since July,
Since July,
Since
in this
July.
fiscal year. That's
this
okay.
fiscal year. Yep. Every time this truck has to be sent out we're having electronic problems. We had some motor work done to it. This truck's giving us a hard time. Fortunately, right now it's working wonderful. Now, the last time it came back from the repair shop, knock on wood, hopefully it stays that way. But so this truck, what would happen is I would rather get rid of this truck and keep Lou's truck. I would trade Todd's truck in and replace it with Lou's truck. Now, Lou's truck is a 2007 International, and that truck was supposed to be replaced 4 years ago. Last year was pushed. So this Lou's truck definitely needs to be replaced on its cycle. We've gone almost half of a cycle of a 10-year cycle for trucks. So Lou's truck works good. We'd use that. I would replace Todd's truck. Todd would take Lou's truck. Lou would get the new truck. So currently we would only need one new dump truck right now. Everybody still on board?
Yeah, except I'm not seeing. Sorry.
So for this amount?
For the 216,000.
Oh, okay, so
It says 195. It's not 195. It's
So it's not
That's
195. That was a mess up. Yep.
16.
okay.
Have you thought of leasing instead of buying?
We do typically lease.
Yeah.
These are, okay. Well, okay.
I mean, last year we talked about buying instead of leasing.
Because you said you just spent $22,000 on this truck, but if it's leased, it wasn't covered for maintenance?
No.
Generally, at least the leases we deal with don't cover maintenance at all. It's
No.
not like leasing a personal vehicle. You're, in essence, have a loan that, well, it's called a lease. You can return the vehicle if you don't have funding for it in some year, but maintenance is not included at all in any of these vehicles.
But don't our vehicles typically outlive the lease?
Usually, yes.
But you're not leasing them from, you're leasing them from the bank. You're not leasing them from like a company where
From the
you
vendor.
from a vendor.
Yeah.
So to take care of the service, you're basically buying
When we say lease, it's more like financing.
the financing. There you go.
Okay, well, they have companies out there where you can lease a truck. And I'm assuming they're going to include maintenance and all that other stuff.
There's certain maintenance things, certain things they're not
Mhm.
going to take care of. I mean, these trucks are used, it's just not a pickup truck. It's being used every day for hauling, all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Troy, I'm not seeing the request for lose truck.
It's like the last one in the trucks. Replace 2007 International, and that's for 216,000.
Yes.
Are you saying it alleviates the need for that?
Alleviate for what?
Well, so if we replace the 2012 with the 2007,
Or are
Right.
you just saying flip flop the years?
Yeah, I'm flip flopping the years due to the work of we put into what we put into Todd's truck already.
I don't have that one.
okay, so I'm kind of confused. Which
I don't.
which
have
one
that.
is which year?
What year is the other one, Stephanie? I don't seem to have that in my packet.
It's the last one. It says
Yeah, but I don't have it here, so.
it's replaced the 2007 International for 216,000.
Right, I don't have the sheet in my packet. So it got missed. Can you just tell me what year it was in?
It's in 21, 22. Yeah. Year one.
This is the truck that should have been replaced last year, but we pushed it one more year.
So you're saying put that one, this one that you're telling us now, this 2012 International into year one and the other one into year two.
Yes.
Okay.
Todd's Lou's truck doesn't have the emissions like which Todd's truck does. So the emissions like Todd's truck could literally, or Lou's truck, sorry, could literally sit and idle on the side of the road for days and not have a problem. Todd's truck has this, all the EGR and all this emissions on it where you can't let them run. So we're having problems with that. When they sit there and idle on the side of the road, the regen light comes on, you have to pull over, they're more of a pain. That's why Todd's truck should be go bye-bye and get Lou's truck. And Lou's truck is still fine, but it needs to be replaced.
What are you suggesting replacing with another International?
No, we're gonna go with Freightliner. No more internationals.
So who would get the replacement truck for the 2007? Or do you want to wait?
No, it would be Lou. Lou would get the new truck, and then
Okay, sorry.
Todd would get Lou's truck. And then Lou's truck would be up for replacement next year.
So if you were to trade this one in, I have some concerns about whether or not we would be up, our contracting bids would be up this year. And we had difficulty last year. We only got one contractor and we needed two, so we had to put someone into a truck. And our current contractor has been pretty firm on the fact that he does not intend to bid again, and is not interested in contracting work again. If we didn't get anyone to bid on our contracting, we'd need another body to put in a truck and another truck.
Another truck. Yep. So we
We
could
couldn't have one.
we could keep this, and hope that, the truck is, I don't want to say it's running good now, that it's finally, hopefully we've cured the problem, but it's taken $22,000 to fix the problem. But we also need another body if we're going to get another body this year.
Okay. That's something for us to think about here, that's a real concern. And, the state pays a whole lot more than we do.
We pay currently 125 and the state's paying 190 to 210 an hour. With like a $5,000 retainer, like they pay them automatically. They give them like $5,000 whether it snows an inch or it doesn't snow at all.
I don't know how we compete with that.
So,
I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but just to summarize, I see 5 requests for 5 trucks and 4 of them are in year 1. Is that correct?
They were all last year, so everything moved this year.
We had 3.
I
in
see
plan.
6.
Well, there's actually one though. There's not. So one truck will go to if you want to go to the pickups now. So last year we discussed for my vehicle an F-150. So I got a price this year with that. So actually one of these vehicles can leave because I got a price for a 350, which I currently drive now, an F-150, and then a 450. The 450 would replace the 450 that's there. The 350 that I drive would be saved and it would replace the maroon truck that's got 206,000 miles on it now. So the maroon truck would go away. If that's with me getting another 350. If I was to get a F-150, we would save the 350 and that would replace the maroon truck.
You're saying you either want the 49,000 or the 40,000.
Exactly. In the 49,000 with the F-350, that's with a plow. The F-150 doesn't have a plow. So I thought there would be a little bit of a bigger savings there. There's really not that much of a savings. So to me, I think it would be better off just to get the 350 with a plow on it and instead of the F-150.
And skip the 150?
Yes, and just get rid of the 150 eliminate it. There was a couple of options there.
So you have 2 trucks replacing 1 truck, but you
Yes.
only need 1 of them.
Even one, we're still not replacing the maroon truck. The maroon truck, my truck will take care of that. We're not getting ahead. We're just still staying with the same thing.
And it's in the statement on both of these, but we've spent just over $15,000 in this year alone making repairs to his vehicle.
So if you hand down your F-350, do you think it's going to last?
I think the maroon, it's better than the maroon truck.
Yeah, the maroon truck, you've got your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that truck basically just is used in the parking lots. They use it to run around town, but it's not used as a daily truck more or less. It's kind of like not a spare, I don't want to say, but it's not a top priority truck that they use every day. We do use it to plow the lots. It gets used when it snows. And luckily it's still hanging in there, but it's getting tired.
So you're looking for a full-size dump truck for 216, an F-350 for 49, an F-450 for 70, and then next year would be another dump truck.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Plus you got
Bucket
the bucket truck and the excavator request.
Yep. And the bucket truck, I can explain a little bit later, with that, why I put it back in there again.
Do you have any vehicles coming off lease?
That I'm not sure. I don't know off.
That might be a Donna question of,
Yeah.
Like said, some of these we keep longer than their lease. So financially to try to level things out, if something's coming off lease, the following year you can throw a new truck kind of in its place for similar value and stay pretty even out of the deal.
We purchased the last one. Oh, no, we leased it. Didn't we, Donna, do we have anything coming off lease?
Yes, there's one dump truck that is coming off at the end of this year.
Donna, do you know which one that is?
Well, the description is 2014 Public Works dump truck.
So that, I wonder if that's Jeff's truck.
Ah,
Oh, could I
that's the one
just
that we
ask,
got the machine, the fancy computer in.
Yep.
what, the snowplow that we bought, like just for cash?
Yep.
First of all, does it have a maintenance plan covering it? And second of all, does whatever it's replacing come off lease or what's up with that?
Oh, I'm kind of confused on
The
that.
one that we bought, that we approved in town meeting.
Yep. So that one, I mean, it's got a warranty. I think it's like 3 years or whatever it is with it that we, it's just like a regular standard warranty. There wasn't a special warranty purchased with it at the time. It's just standard warranted from Freightliner.
And what did it replace?
It didn't replace anything. It replaced
Oh, we needed one. We needed we didn't have a contractor.
That was for that, okay.
So for those of you that haven't studied that big spreadsheet, which is best in hand if you have it, line 8 is the 2014 Public Works dump truck, ending in 2021. It looks like the payment in this fiscal year was about $25,000. So in theory, in 21, 22, you could roll a truck in there with an annual payment of about $25,000 and maybe closer to 30. Donna, you do 7-year leases on the public works equipment?
Yes,
Okay. So if you took that 216, divide that by 7, add a little interest in it, that'll give you what an annual payment for a full-size dump truck would be. So that we try not to have overlapping leases if we can, because that makes for some tough years, but sometimes you can't avoid it. Trying to see if anything else is coming out.
I know last year, when we purchased that other truck, we saved, I think we did the math on that. And I think, Donna, you can see if I'm correct, but we saved around $30,000 in the interest by paying for the truck versus leasing it.
Plus we got some maintenance, because did you say that we don't get maintenance ground in when we lease?
No, yeah, you don't, you're just leasing it from the bank more or less. You're not doing like Freightliner has a program where you lease the trucks and out of 7 years, you can return the truck. You can still pay for it and they would take care of, there's certain scheduled maintenance that they would take care of, with it, just like a regular car. There is a little different situation. I can get that exact information and give that to you guys.
Have we ever done that before? Christina, do you know if we ever did that? We usually just bank lease them, right?
Yeah, it would be useful to have that, just so you know what your cost is going to be next year and you don't have any unexpected large expenses,
I mean,
Yeah,
hopefully, with the new truck, they're warrantying the transmit, they're warrantying everything. We had a problem with our new one. The belt came off of it the last time it snowed. They came and got it. They fixed it right away. There was no charge with that. Things do happen with new vehicles too, but just like a standard warranty, like you would get with any vehicle.
Typically extended warranties are available, maybe, but what the dealer usually does is they figure out, okay, it's going to cost us $20,000 over the course of a couple years to maintain this thing. I'm going to charge the customer $30 just in case. It's like going to Best Buy. Do you buy the extended warranty on your TV? Most people don't. It's a profit center for the store if you do. And it's the gamble you take of, well, I hope it doesn't break.
Yeah.
But somebody makes some money out of the deal, and it's certainly not us at the end, typically.
What if you just lease them while they're in warranty, say for 3 years? I don't know what the warranty is. Every 3 years, you're out of warranty, you get a new one.
You'd have a huge payment. I mean, if you're gonna get rid of trucks in 3 years, I mean, we're having a hard time getting rid of trucks in 10 years versus 3 years. I don't think it would be beneficial to the cost wise to lease a truck for about 3 years. Yeah.
The thing that I'm kind of concerned about is like, at some point, Troy, I'd probably ask you the question I always ask you, which is, well, I did last year anyway, which is what's your top 3 priorities? Because I'm a little worried about not just what happens this year and next year with, 7 pieces of equipment being requested, but what happens 7 years from now? And doing it all again, because to me, this just kind of wipes out any real infrastructure spending for the rest of the plan. If we're going to buy this much heavy equipment. So I don't know how to get my head around what's the best way to do this, but I don't think we want to revisit this and have the same plan have the same problem with a gush and not the layered idea of leasing in 7 years. But what do other people think?
Well, I mean, I think things have been pushed for so long that now it's all of a sudden it's come to a head where if Lou's truck was replaced 5 years ago, you would be in a cycle. There's 4 trucks there. So every say 5 years, you'd be looking for a big truck. Where it'd be now we're down to vehicles. So if you push these vehicles out again next year, it's going to be the same thing next year. Or I'm going to come to you in an emergency, say, hey, I have 2 dead trucks. What do you want me to do? So, I mean, I think that's where, if we would have done 1 truck last year and then the 2 pickups this year, and then next year Todd's truck, you wouldn't be in that situation we're in now. I think we've extended our trucks to the point where now that they need to be replaced, and there's no way around it anymore.
And last year we were talking about having a backup public works trucks, and we had 3 vehicles in the plan, and then COVID, right? So we were concerned about not having cash flow and what people would be able to do and what our revenue would look like. So we put them off. So we really, we hurt ourselves, but we didn't know at all where we'd be. We couldn't imagine. So we have hurt ourselves a little bit, but I might suggest, and when we get to talking about dollars and how much we want to put into this plan, last year we talked about increasing our bottom line, and I would suggest we seriously talk about that again. Plus, we returned quite a bit of money last year.
Right.
And is this the time to put that into the capital plan where we put things off? As a town, Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I think we returned about $185,000 because we really froze a lot of spending last year. And so if we took some of those funds that we put back into the general fund and incorporated into this plan, we might be able to help ourselves a little bit this year. Just something for us to think about.
Would it be worth something to take like the 2 pickups and buy those outright instead of leasing them? Is there money instead of putting them on that plan to say, now we've leased out 3 trucks, or if we could pay for the 2 trucks or 1 truck, or that I'm not sure on.
And those should have warranties, right? I mean, every private person gets that. So,
I'm going to answer a question. So in the chat, Carrie asked a very good question. When we're in person, I'll start with this, is a whole lot easier to deal with, and we're looking at things together in the room. This is a difficult process to have. We typically, Carrie, talk about, everybody will submit all of their projects, and then we start talking about how many dollars we have, and then we'll start shifting them into different years, and we'll all be looking at a shared spreadsheet. So typically we look at about $500,000, right, for all of the projects in a given year, in each given year, and then spread it out over the different plans. But we may, as a committee, decide that we think that 500,000 mark should be increased. So you might see $1 million worth of asks in year 1, and we have to whittle it down and decide what's the most important, and then shift everything into the plan so that it works into a realistic, if we had to fund them in all of those years. So
And last year, I think I proposed it, but Stu, I don't know if you remember what we ended up with, but I think we ended up with an average of, either 550 or 590 a year. But we went up a certain amount, and then we kind of undid that when we didn't finish the plan because of,
Well, yeah, and historically, and this goes back 20, 25 years, somebody came up with a mystical figure of this is what we want to spend for capital projects. And it's partly based, I think, on, what your bank balance needs to be to keep the lenders happy and, so on and so on. And then occasionally, every few years, it seems that, the sky is falling, let's not spend anything of what we're committed for. And that just pushes everything out. There is no savings by pushing it out. As Troy is finding out, yeah, we pushed it out, and now it's just killing them in repair costs. The only way to save something is to cut it out of the plan completely and forever. In a perfect world, we collectively would have saved the money and had a nice little kitty set aside that, think of capital reserve times 2 kind of thing. They could go out and pay cash for these things. You wouldn't have to pay any interest charges, and you buy it outright, and then you're free to do with it whatever you want in terms of how long you're going to keep it. As a municipality, we haven't done that in many, many, many years. And then, frankly, in most people's personal lives, I don't know many people that go out and pay cash for a brand new vehicle. You go out and get a loan. That's the only way you can get it, but have use of that newer vehicle.
Well, plus and Donna gave us the figure last year when we made the decision to recommend this, that, it's never been altered for basic, inflation rates.
Mhm.
So.
Yes,
so
many years that figure was
pool
quite
has never
flat.
grown. Yeah. So we're
And,
kind of living about 2 or 3 decades ago.
yes, and that's caught up with it. The price of vehicles certainly hasn't remained flat. But our dollar amount that, somebody had set aside for us has. So that means you can buy less and less each year. And then, the annual, you gotta sell the tax rate to the taxpayer kind of thing, and nobody ever likes to go up on taxes, but there's a trade-off of services, reliability of services. Troy's in worse shape this year than probably most, but it's affecting his operations. And occasionally, that'll run down to a fire department vehicle that, you're spending all this money for repair, it's out of service, you don't have use of it. And these are all the things we have to juggle. What I'm seeing here right now is, since that one dump truck, the 2014 is coming off lease, we could probably afford, one of the 216,000 for a new one, which is a good thing. Then the next thing is, what about, the F350, F450 project? Can we afford that as well? So now you're putting 3 vehicles on a lease in 1 year.
I know last year we definitely talked about like replacing Troy's the 350 and paying for it and not leasing a $39,000 vehicle. It just didn't seem at the time. I think the number was much less than it is now. And was it smarter for us to pay for it outright than strap ourselves for year after year?
Yeah.
With a lease payment? But to answer Carrie's question, we typically will hear all of the projects and we'll see them in a spreadsheet that Donna gives us. And then we have to start moving around money and we determine what that figure is. Historically, it's been around $500,000 for everything in each given year. And then you just have to start kind of playing musical projects.
Okay, so that's for everything. So again,
Yes.
Troy, not to pick on you, but just like the salt shed,
A lot of that is
the salt shed proposal, I see that. Okay, so what I'm reading, like that would be something that would be the sum total of the improvements for the entire year. Is that the sort of
Yeah.
number that we're talking about.
In your packet, did your packet have a spreadsheet in it? So you can kind of see what year one last year, we didn't complete the plan because of COVID, but year one, when we're all done hearing these projects, everything everybody asked for in the new year one of this year's plan will be listed out here, and you'll see what it totals up to and whether or not it's,
All right.
$2 million and we got to whittle it down.
Okay.
But the salt shed project, you look at it, it's over $500,000. But a lot of those funds were not from town funds, they're from other things. So they'll get shifted into different funds on the spreadsheet. And when we can see it out in a spreadsheet, it's a lot easier to put together.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Again, total.
It's
newbie.
not, that's not, if you
No, it's a
haven't
good
got through
question.
this process, that's a great question.
right.
And I think sometimes we're used to doing it and we forget that some of you haven't sat here before and we just start talking like we all are on the same page.
All right. Thank you.
Are these trucks used year round, or is there only seasonally? Say, is our truck just used for snow plowing?
Truck gets used every day. Every day. It's very rare that a truck actually sits there for more than a day or two. Unless somebody's out on vacation or something, these trucks get used. Like I
So
said,
they use more in the winter.
more in the week. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so have you considered having a special fund for this? And so, that we figure out how much we put in every year so we don't get this every 3 or 4 year spike.
That's
I
That may
haven't
be
heard that talked about, but I don't know.
It's an interesting concept, and it is used in some towns. I know for the fire service and maybe for the public works as well, is they set aside, if they said, Troy, we'll give you $100,000 a year. And now it's up to you to decide, do you want to save it for a couple of years and buy a big truck? Or do you want to spend it every year and buy a bunch of little trucks or anywhere in between? It kind of throws it back to, you have a known expense. The thing is, it may not meet your needs. That you may run into a year that you need 4 trucks. You haven't helped us all. We'd probably say no to that anyways, but so to put a fixed amount, and fixed is a relative term, you can change it obviously, and just set it aside and say, here's your kitty for buying what you want, and you decide out of the batch, that, hey, the most important thing is, the bucket truck this year, and I'm going to put off buying a dump truck.
I like that idea, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It doesn't mean every year that, just to say this year, if you give me the 3 trucks, I'm going to come next year for one big dump truck because that truck needs to be replaced. And then it might not be for another 1 or 2 years that I need a big dump truck. There's only 4 to replace. We bought a new one last year. We get a new one this year, another new one. So you're going on a cycle. I don't think we stick to the 10-year cycle. So another 10 years from now, Lou's truck should be replaced if we followed that plan. The problem is the plan hasn't been followed, and now we're all bottled up. If you don't continue to follow a plan, it's going to happen year after year after year. And I know it's hard with funds and everything, but that's what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, these trucks don't last forever. I mean, the 2004, I think, or the F450 is like 16 years old. I mean, how much more are we going to keep using that truck for? And before literally it breaks, your parking lots don't get plowed. School, we don't have school. Everything keeps going.
So what do you feel about that? It seems to me that you would be inherently being forced into a plan if you're giving a budget. And you say, this is how much you're getting every year, you figure it out. And
right. But I mean, at $100,000, that's not enough. I mean, we're talking a pickup truck that's $70,000. So I mean, I'm going to save for 5 years, then we're in the same situation we are in.
yeah,
The 100 was just a mystical figure.
Right. I'm just saying,
you.
that's fine. I'm just, I mean, if I come to you and say I need $300,000 a year and you put only $500,000 to fix the whole town, there's obviously, there's not enough money, that's what it is. It's not every year I'm going to ask for $500,000 worth of vehicles. If
But
we were
that's
to,
similar to what we're doing now, right? We're in the CIP plan, we're showing, instead of in a separate fund, we're showing it in a different year.
right.
you know, you're showing that you need 50,000. We just got this crazy backup of vehicles because we put, you know, things off because of funding issues for years, and then COVID did not help us.
Roy, do you think it might be a good idea to talk, especially because we got several new members, to talk about the two pieces that are outright new ones that you're asking for? They're not replacements, but i.e. the bucket truck and the
In the excavator.
excavator.
Yeah, the excavator, I can start with the excavator. Hold on, let me get my paperwork here. Hold on. Okay, so the excavator. Let's see, where am I? Okay, the last year I gave you two prices, and we actually rented one for actually 3 months this year. 1 month last year and 2 months this year. We actually got quite a bit of stuff done. We put over 1,200 feet of drainage on Fisher Hill. We did some lighting at the park that we never ended up finishing. We did some other stuff, some drainage, some catch basins. But what I did is we rented a John Deere 60. It's about $3,700 a month to rent it. So last year I asked for an 85, and currently it was about $111,000. So this year I said, well, we rented the 60. It worked out perfect for what we needed to do. So that price came in at $66,000. So I think the smaller machine would be beneficial than the bigger machine for what we need to do. You know, we used it for 3 months. We put it down waterways. We did some catch basins with it. We did drainage on the side of the road. We actually took some trees down with it. It was a very versatile machine instead of the bigger one. So I would say throw the bigger one out at 111,000 and go with the 66,000. It's a machine we could use all the time. I really do. It's probably on my top priority. The lighting down at the park, it makes our job and our lives easier with this machine.
And we lost some time in the rental with that one because of rain. Like we got lucky when it was the drought this summer. But, you know, I know Troy talked to us about what he could do. And if he only rents it for a month and it rains, you know, 3 of those 4 weeks.
And I have guys on vacation. It's hard. Where right now, if I had the machine, we could be down at the park putting the lights in down there. I mean, we've had a mild winter so far. There's things that machine can do every day. It's not just going to sit there. I think it's beneficial for the town. I really do. I believe.
And you said you rented it for 3 months this last year.
Well, we rented it once for like last year, and then we rented it in the fall again, and in the spring we rented it for the month in June. We rented it till July, and then we rented it in October.
Okay, so for like annualized, that rental would have cost what, something like 8,000?
No, it's 3,700 each time we rented it. So whatever, 39. It was about what, 10,000.
About 11,000.
Right. Okay, so that's what, close to 12.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, since excavation and stuff is kind of seasonal, why is renting not a better way to do it?
Well, because renting's so hard because one, weather plays a part of it, and then the guys with vacation, you know, they're not allowed to take time off right now because if it snows and, you know, the ground's frozen or vice versa. In the summertime, they want to take their time off, and I have a limited window. I sweep for 3 months, they chip seal, they do some paving, and then now it's like try to get everything in between. You know, hey, nobody can take the month of this off, and you're telling people that. And then you're rushed. If it rains 3 days out of that week, we work 4 days a week. Now I'm 1 day. Where if I own the machine, we can put it to the side, we can come back to it. And there's still drainage you can do right now, even though it's cold out. We still could put pipe in the ground. Doesn't mean we're going to dig in the road, but we can do on the side. We had a lot of water spots this year. We can fix some of that stuff. Unfortunately, we can't fix it if it rains every day and we fall behind. If I get one guy out, now I have 3 guys. It makes the job harder. Where you can plan it. Hey, I'm going to do a week. I'm going to concentrate on this drainage. Next week, we're going to, you know, trim some trees. And next week, we're going to go over here and do that, or we're doing work at the town hall. So it's hard. If the machine if we owned it, it would be less stressful trying to figure stuff out. The guys, you know, you're pushing the guys all the time doing it. You're not allowing them to take time off. And I don't think it's fair for the guys, to be honest with you, for that. And then it gets to be too stressful where if we own the machine, somebody calls up and says, there's a drain way in the back of my house. Well, now I have to rent a machine. I can't get the backhoe back there. I need an excavator. So we tried to do a lot of these trouble spots while we had it. And we also tried putting pipe in the ground. That machine didn't stop. The first time we rented it, we ran it every single day. It didn't stop. The last time we kind of got rained out a couple times. We couldn't do it. So we lost money, I feel.
Troy, we talked about trying to take on some of the Village Hill project on our own.
Mhm.
Is the smaller machine enough to do that, not the bigger machine?
And the only thing is if we hit ledge, and that's even if we had a bigger machine, unfortunately, I guess the right way to do that project is maybe have somebody come in and do some core samples to see if there is ledge there and go from there and spend some money that way. But it's something, Village Hill is a prime example. We could put 3 catch basins in this year. It's 3 more than what we had last year. That even if it took us 4 years to do that project, we're doing something. Next year, if I had the machine and we put 6 basins in, it's 6 more than what we had last year. It's a start.
And that's we have it as a $257,000 project.
And it's way more than that now. If you had job was to actually be bidded out the correct way, you're probably looking at $1 million for that job. By the
And
time
we talked about this last year. We talked about, show us what you can do on Village Hill with this piece of equipment, and then COVID.
Unfortunately, I think the guys can do it, but I think with a rented machine, it's a rush, and you're rushing. Where if the machine was owned, where if we worked for a week or 2 weeks and then we came back to it, we put 2 basins in, just say in a week. That's what we did. We come back to it the following week, or we have a tropical storm. We're concentrating on that, and then now you lost rental on the machine. Where you can do it. I think we could do that whole project. It might take 2 or 3 years. Who knows? It could take 1 year. We could do the whole project. I don't know. It all depends on how everything goes. But
Is it possible to consolidate? I'm sorry, I don't know what machines you have, and if consolidate, say two trucks or 2 machines, and replace them with 1 truck or 1 machine that has more. That's the capability to do the same as what machines you're replacing it with.
We don't have that capability of just getting rid of. We run with bare minimum. We have a backhoe and a payloader. That's what we have. I mean, on Wednesdays, we use the backhoe at the transfer station, so I lose that machine on Wednesdays. So that's by adding them together. No, we don't have that type of stuff. We don't have spare vehicles. We don't have all that stuff.
We're gonna talk about the bucket truck project.
All right, so I put last year, and I know that got thrown out right away. But we had that tropical storm. I've spent the tree budget already. We spent, I think it was close to $17,000 having a contractor come in to take out the hangers, to cut trees that were snapped. And I don't have that money. I put more money in this year's budget just because. And I have lists of trees, pages of trees that need to come down right now, and I don't have the funds to do it. One, it's a safety issue. I understand that we can't take down every single tree in town next to the power lines or something like that. I'm not saying get rid of the contractor. We still need a contractor to come in and take the hazardous trees down next to the lines. But there's a lot of roads that we can trim and go down and just lift the canopy up a little bit so they're not hitting our trucks. It's not safe for my guys to go in the back of a 450 with a pole saw and go as high as they can and have limbs fall on them. That's unsafe. But the limbs are hitting the trees. We can't afford I think it's $1,400 a day for a contractor to come in and trim 70 miles of road. Asplin's done a nice job working on the power lines, but if you go down the road, one side looks good, the next side there's branches sticking out everywhere. If we could work together and clear that out, are we going to use a bucket truck every day? Absolutely not. But in the wintertime, right now, when things are slow, this is the time that they should be out there cutting trees and limbing stuff. If you have driven around the ash trees, it's called blonding, and that's from the emerald ash borer. That tree that's blonding right now, within 9 months, it'll be on the ground. It'll be dead. So we have these heavy windstorms that are going to come in. We're in a rude awakening for the trees that are going to come down in this town in the next year and a half. It's going to be a disaster. Look around. You can see them. The bark's peeling right off of them. It's something where we can start taking those screws down, and it's a huge safety issue. So that's why I would recommend it. It's not a new bucket truck. 100,000 is at a high price. We might find one for 50,000, but unfortunately, we just have to look for it if the money gets approved.
Jumping ahead perhaps a little bit, the salt shed.
Yep.
Both in terms of the project and the funding.
We have 346, just shy of 347,000 in the reallocated steep funds.
Yep.
But everything was put on hold because of COVID. So we're hoping to, get that contract still signed. It's becoming painful. It's very difficult to do work with some state agencies in these times currently. But that's how much we have for that project. We did originally, part of that project was the oil tank replacement, and that was done. We did that last year, so we have the new oil tank there. It's above ground.
I have two questions about this, and one is there any downside from using, well, I guess I'm kind of looking at the mild winters we've had of late, and the chance of having a year's worth of product sitting there year over year, parts of it. Is there any downside from using old product year over year? It never goes bad or anything.
No, the salt,
Okay.
the salt will get hard, but you can break it up with a loader or something like that. So, I mean, if we didn't say this year it didn't snow, and we had, I think there's 87,000 there for salt, and we spent probably like 20,000 so far. So if I had a place to put it, I could buy another $60,000 worth of salt, and now you're already ahead from next year, where you might not have to buy that much salt next year. It will never go bad. If we had a place to put it, a year's worth of salt would already be stocked up. We wouldn't be hauling it in on a daily basis.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask is the need to have a year's worth of salt in the old way of figuring that declining due to global warming? In other words, because of these mild winters, are we having less need?
No, I mean, I don't think anybody can predict. I mean, we've gotten quite a bit of snow this year already. I mean, they haven't been, we had that big storm there. I mean, who knows, it might not snow for the next 2 weeks, and then in February, it could snow every day.
Yeah.
It's hard, I mean, to do with it. Hopefully it doesn't. It'd be perfect. We could save our fleet that time.
I mean, we had a very mild winter last year. We had almost nothing in January, February, and March like we usually do, but I don't know how long that will last.
And are the cracks due to the mineral that will not be named?
In the salt shed we have now, yes. It's actually, I walked behind it the other day there, and there's actually some big chunks that are actually like falling out of there now. I mean, it doesn't help that we scoop material into it. I mean, you're pushing against the back wall, but there's really nothing else you can do there. Unfortunately, it is what it is, but I don't think that it's going to last too much longer, more or less.
So I know it's 519, looks like 172 is the portion that wouldn't be covered by the steep grant.
Would you prefer to get a salt shed for 347 and a bucket truck, or do you want your $500,000 salt shed?
I would say the salt shed in the bucket truck, to be honest.
Well, I'll propose without looking at the numbers. You're probably not going to get both.
No, but
so if you've got a smaller salt shed for 347,
yeah,
conceptually the money would be there to get, either an excavator or a bucket truck.
Yeah.
You as a department head, along with your bosses, have to kind of figure out what's most important to you.
With an excavator, could we do some of the site work ourselves? Okay, it was worth a shot.
The salt shed, I mean, we're using more salt than we are sand now. I mean, the state's pushing you to run pure salt more and less.
We couldn't do some of that site work ourselves?
And we could, some of it we could. I mean, it all depends. I mean, we're going with 100 by 100. We could shrink that and make it, 75 by 75 or 100 by, 60 or something like that. Or who knows? I mean, to get it down with that price. I mean, 100 by 100 is a good size. I mean, there's more than a year's worth of material in there being.
Well, and I look at the past history that, at least in my recent knowledge, there's only been 1 year in the last 30 that Wellington ran out of salt and the entire state ran out of salt all at once.
It won't happen. That won't happen again. The person where we're getting it from basically owns the salt.
So to say that we need a year's worth of salt, and I think the cost per ton is usually on state contract for the year.
Yep.
So there's no savings in buying the punch other than it's handy to have around.
Yeah.
But if you got 6 months of salt, reduce the cost of your salt shed and
Yep.
be able to put some funding towards something else.
Absolutely.
Now, I believe, Erica, the steep funding was set aside for the salt shed project, right?
That is correct.
So it
300,
isn't,
about
it isn't like we can
327.
steal it for something else to do another project.
They shouldn't, but we still haven't gotten a contract since they reallocated it, so. Shouldn't, but I won't say no. The check's not in our hands. Well, that's not true. We have the funds. We've had the funds.
I just to summarize, you ran out of salt once in 30 years, and then the whole state ran out. So it wasn't because of the solids of our shed that we ran out.
It was the availability trying to get it.
And there was certainly scrambling to try to get some salt from here, there, and everywhere. But it was once in 30 years. I'd rather invest that money into something that would, be at the excavator that would get some more benefit year round and get a smaller salt shed and going with the full size salt shed.
And some of the salt shed, the work was moving it from where it is too.
Yes, I believe you had a lot of site work because you got to cut into that hillside.
Yep.
That's why I asked if an excavator could help us do some of that, but he says no.
So
No,
We
there's
can
like
always take a turn in the excavator,
material that need to be moved.
the bucket truck and an excavator.
You can maybe cut the trees and move the wood out of there, but that's about it.
And these aren't, at least in my mind, set in stone. If you wanted to make any changes, just like you'd put in the F-150 and the F-350, and we'll toss one out and go with one.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to make a revision to any of these to kind of help us prioritize which ones are most important, that would be helpful for everybody.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be done tonight.
Well, no, I mean, Carl would have to be, he's the one who engineered the salt shed and with that. So, he would have to, shrink that down. And I can get, because I believe that just the canopy last year was like $201,000 for the, to cover the shed. I can call and get a price on that just to see to shrink that size down and then go from there.
Yeah.
It's.
If we could get the whole, I think what I hear you saying, Sarah, is if we could get the whole project done with just the steep funds.
Yes, and that clears it up. It makes it more clear for everybody in terms of what projects that I think it would get you to a salt shed that would satisfy you for the next 20 years. Like I said, given the current environment and where we're headed. And then that would, otherwise we've got to come up with 100 and something thousand for the salt shed, which means 100 and something thousand is not available for either one of your projects or one of the other projects.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments on the salt shed? One place. What else we have, Troy? There's a couple other oddball.
Yeah, there's a couple other ones.
Storm mapping, stormwater mapping is one that's been tossed around for quite a few years.
Yeah, and I believe talking to Carl there a couple months ago, we were actually working on something, and he was working on something, getting like a handheld GPS unit and actually going around and plugging them in instead of putting, costing or having a company come in and do that. I haven't talked to Carl recently about that, but I know he was working on something that he was going to get so we could program where all the outfalls are. So, I mean, that probably could be pushed out, another year or so with that. I know it's in this year and it's in for next year. That
I
probably,
believe last year, maybe even the year before, it was contingent on trying to find somebody to do it.
right.
You're going to try to talk with was it the T3 group?
Yeah, he
over
was,
at UConn, that they were going to try to find somebody because we weren't the only town to have to do this, but that doesn't seem to have appeared.
now, a lot of towns actually assigned, they made they hired people inside, an extra guy to go just to do all these outfalls and to make sure this MS4 is on track and stuff like that. So a lot of towns have done that.
What data elements do you have to collect for each of these?
Well, they go on where all the outfalls are. So pipe diameter, size, where it goes out. And then they want it all on a map, through a GIS system. So you can pull it up and, say the water dumps out here, it goes out behind this lady's house over there. So there's some work involved with that. But Carl was saying instead of, paying a company to do it, which is going to be more than the 20,000 for both years, it was something that we could slowly work on and start plugging away, getting this stuff done with a handheld GPS unit, and it goes back to the information and then put into the computer system.
Sounds like a good job for Jason.
And as long as if we can have him around for a few more hours, and as long as we're making progress, then we're still compliant with the MS4.
I won't say we've been making progress. We keep saying we're going to do it and don't, but
We're slowly
not-
working on it. It's a work in progress.
and I believe that falls under the other flavor that is the stormwater interceptors
Yep.
that have been talked about, I think, for at least 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, those were pushed out.
What is the deadline?
Those are in year 2.
It's another one of those mystical ones that as long as you're making progress, they don't come and make trouble with you. But if it falls on somebody's desk someday and they want to make an issue of it, they could.
Yep, absolutely. And that's basically, those are just catch basins. I mean, with our excavator, you could dig it out.
No, I mean, we did have an audit. We came up on their list and they came out here and went over some things with us, and our progress qualified in there. Another Christina's got a friend.
Now, is that a redesign of the catch basins that
Yeah.
are on the property around Public Works now?
Yep. There's actually 2 at Public Works. There's one in the back and then one going out. There's a catch basin right there. That one's going out that has it. So these 2 would go up at the transfer station. So that's all that was. So it'd collect the water up there and so nothing runs off there.
Add that to your list of things to do.
Yep.
I think the last 2, of course, are the biggest 2 probably. We talked a little bit about the Village Hill Road drainage. The other is the Schofield Road.
Yep. And those have been pushed out.
And
for-
Liska.
And let's go. Road.
Oh, unless because fairly
And-
new one that's.
And then
added
he
a little
also
bit.
has a bus lot paving, which is a small one.
Where
For
you-
use out.
Those are the ones I was hoping, especially Liska Road, that we could have used lots of funds for. Right.
Yep.
It happened.
I mean, the bus lot, I wouldn't say that's a priority. I mean, that can keep getting pushed. If we can keep the tractor trailer trucks out of there, last year we actually had one go in, turn around, and when he spun the trailer, he basically pushed all the asphalt up. We had to go clean that up. And then we ended up locking the gate for a while, but with the buses there now and school running, it's kind of hard to have somebody give a key or lock it. Somebody doesn't lock it. So it's one of those things, but I wouldn't say a priority. That can be pushed out for a while.
If I believe the hazard mitigation plan is coming back up for review, Erica, with CROG. I saw some notice of preliminary, that's that 5-year plan we have to do.
We just,
We did it, I think, what, 3 or 4, well, WinCog was doing it, which gave it. to
we've done it in
CEQA.
my time, so it's not up yet.
So that's coming. So Liska Road could fall under the hazard mitigation. Where they talked about, overtopping the road with floodwaters and things like that, where it's a not designed enough to carry the water that's coming downstream there. However, you have to have another hurricane for them to set aside hazard mitigation funds. That's how we did the one on Turnpike Road extension, where one was washed out, but two was obviously undersized. And after the storm, they set aside roughly 10% for these hazard mitigation projects. So while I'm not praying for a hurricane to come, that's something to to keep that in the plan. They're saying, hey, this is a place that we've got that's, we know is a problem and we need to fix it as best we can. And if funding becomes available and under hazard mitigation, we can get that one done. And if you know of any others to add to the list, it's kind of an ongoing thing of both state roads and local roads. What do you need to fix? They won't do maintenance. So if you have a culvert that's rotted out, they won't fix that. But if you have one that's undersized or doesn't exist, that they'll work on for funding.
Are these figures for Village Hill and Schofield, if we jobbed it out? Or is it if you guys work on it?
Yeah, those are prices that are years old. I mean, you can't just ask for bids. I mean, and that has to go out where, it has to be resurveyed. It's going to cost money for a contractor to do that. I mean, that would have to be like bid out to then you'd have to have a bid opening and stuff like that. I mean, you're probably talking you're close to probably $1 million by the time I'm done with these projects. I mean, these are big projects. There's water that goes behind people's houses that needs to be reviewed.
And last year we had put in $30,000 for the Village Hill, and that was us doing some of it on our own. So trying to chip away at that one instead of in one big lump sum and a contractor doing it on our own.
Yeah.
So, and I know, I feel like every time we talked about this, and Christina's probably heard it a lot more years than I have. The problem with the Schofield Road one is where the water is going to go. So it's not even like we're quite ready for it to be at the top of the priority list. There's so many unanswered questions with that project.
Yep.
Now, Liska Road, I believe you have it split for a little bit of money for engineering,
Yes,
and then of course a whole lot of money to fix it.
a whole lot of money.
The engineering is usually not a bad idea because it gives you a more accurate figure in terms of what the actual construction is going to be. And the other is when it comes time to do it, you can move a lot faster because the engineering is done as well. So it's kind of like investment into the project and go from there. In the very big picture, we keep talking about doing a bond someday. A bond is typically to borrow a whole lot of money at the best rate you can. And we're typically talking in the millions of dollars, can be less, but there's a large overhead cost to getting a bond and doing, Schofield and Village Hill and the school and the firehouse and, whatever ones that are hugely unobtainable, but can be spread out. And I think those bonds, and perhaps Donna would know this one, are those typically 20 years for a bond?
What's the
Yes,
library?
it could be. The library is 20 years.
That one's up in 2027.
So that's typically where you see the big money set aside. Back in 1990, they repaired or rebuilt the whole section of Moose Meadow Road, in and around Burma Road, kind of going both ways. And they bought 2 fire trucks at the same time on a bond. Those are some other options. Is that you're still borrowing the money, you're still paying interest. You're just typically getting a good interest rate because it's a tax-free income to whoever buys the bonds, and we get to spread it over 20 years. Ultimately, you're still paying for it, but it softens the blow a little bit. And we bring that up, I think, every year. Oh, we're going to do a bond in 4 years or 5 years, and it just keeps getting pushed out. But that's kind of the facts of life. And some of this will be driven by the Board of Ed discussion, I believe, in terms of what way they're headed for some of the issues that they have to deal with. So,
I noticed that in there that some of the recommendations are saying, I want to replace an F-150 with another F-150. And I'm wondering, has the cost been looked at? Why are we being specific as to the model and not saying I want to replace the F-150 with, something else to be determined? Have you already made that decision that replacing F-150 with an F-150 is the best way to go?
Well, there is no F-150. Originally, the F-150 was going to replace my truck, which I drive now as an F-350.
Mm-hmm.
So the F-350 was going to replace the maroon truck. So then I was to get a new truck for it. And then I don't need a big truck. I don't plow. So this truck would be, so instead of buying a bigger truck, but the problem is the cost of the F-150 is basically the cost of an F-350. So you might as well get a bigger truck
Okay.
that can be used more than just the F-150.
Plow, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay.
And it's like $9,000 difference.
It's
Yeah.
exactly. So that's the reason why.
Plowed a little bit last storm. It was a little rough, but
It was.
hit some icy spots.
I just think, with the Village Hill and Schofield thing, of course, and Liska to a different degree, we just talked about for so long. And those are neighborhoods that are, some of the most highly populated in town, probably. And we do kind of keep pushing it off. I'm wondering, is this the year where we can talk seriously about something there? Maybe it isn't.
I feel like last year it was though. Steph. We had a solid plan to start working and chipping away at the Village Hill project. And I think we were all pretty serious about, we need to really do something with that. And it was another way for Troy to show us what he could do with the machine and kind of justify getting it. And I feel like a broken record, but then COVID.
Yeah.
So we really cut back on our expenses. So we didn't get to start at it, but.
So maybe we just do that sort of starter plan this year
Yeah. And just, make it happen.
or something. Because those folks have been patient.
Very.
yeah, that they have.
Donna, I don't have the document. You do. Do you think you could have a spreadsheet with all of these in it for us to follow along with by our next meeting?
I will try, but I'm tied up with the Board of Ed budget this week and next week, but I will see what I can do.
If you send it to me, can I take a crack at it?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. As I think it'll be easy, especially for, Carrie and Orlando to kind of follow along and see it in all mapped out. And if you haven't picked up your packet, they are here. Just, let us know and we'll make sure you get that so you can see all the documentation that's here.
Do you have a project specific list? So let's say we don't prioritize the equipment, we prioritize the project. And then we say, what equipment do you need for this project? Or what equipment do you need for these 3 projects? And deal with the issue that way.
In Public Works, you mean?
And just for the whole funding of equipment, yeah.
Well, those big, the projects that, like Village Hill is something we could tackle. Schofield is probably a little bit over, there's a little over our head. Liska Road, and we're not bridge builders. So that's definitely out, stuff like that. But the Village Hill project, I think we could save the town, some money by doing it ourselves. It might take a few years, you got to get somebody in there to reclaim it after you do it, repave it. That's something we don't, do in town with our forces. But, catch basin wise, I think you could, save some money on that project, but some projects are just way too big for what we do. We still need to maintain, other roads and do other stuff in town with a limited crew too. We're a small crew.
Thanks.
Yeah, Orlando, I think with the exception of perhaps the excavator, where you can somewhat plan most of your projects with that, most of this is day-to-day reactionary forces of, hey, we had a storm go through last night. We got around all the roads, get all the brush out of the roads, you know, and every truck is, and every guy is out there doing their thing. Even the bucket truck is kind of a reactionary one for a large part of that, that, gee, you know, the storm came through, we got to get these trees, you know, out from where they are now. And we can't wait for the contractor to come in, if the contractor's even available. So that's the idea, having these reactions. So it isn't like a dump truck is tied to a particular thing, or a mower or anything like that. You know, we waited.
A concern I have is how the taxpayer might view us going out and all of a sudden spending a whole bunch of money on new trucks at one time. You know, they might push back from that. It's just perception, even though it may be justified, it may be needed. Perception might be that you're going out and buying a bunch of new toys. That if we, you know, somehow don't buy it all at one time, but buy it in a way where it looks like it's actually being used and they can see the results of it, that it would give us more support for investing going forward.
I would, you know, suspect that a large part of what the town public works crew does is invisible. The snow magically disappears over a few hours after a storm, kind of thing. Thing is, if they're down 2 trucks, and now it takes, you know, 8 hours to get the snow off instead of 4, that's when you'll see it. In terms of, hey, we bought a new truck this year and we're able to plow our routes in a timely manner and get the roads open. People won't see that. You know, they won't attribute it to a particular expense. Well, gee, I'm glad we bought that dump truck this year because they're able to plow the roads. There's expectations of the level of service. I mean, you can plow the town with 1 truck. Take you a long time to do it. And if the townspeople are happy with that, you know, similar to a fire truck, you know, I can bring a 55-gallon drum of water. The fire will go out eventually, but is that the level of service you promised people to provide? And
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Orlando, and I don't disagree. It's, you know, if we were to buy 3 or 4 trucks this year, it would look a little excessive to the town and a little opulent. But if our justification in our transparency to the town are photos of the rotted out truck bed that Troy drives in, or the 450 that's like, is it the 450, the maroon truck?
The maroon truck.
Track of all their numbers. You know, photographs of them, or the $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 worth of repair bills that we spent in the last year because we have kept them for another year and another year and another year. And that's why we've gotten to this point, as we continue to kind of put them off, because something a little bit bigger and a little bit more important came up, and it seemed to be working, and so we could put it off. And so we kind of backed ourselves into a corner here. And it does, it's going to look like a little excessive spending to some. And that's why this process and as transparent and open as we can be about why we would need a new, we call it a plow truck, right? But it's being used all year long for different projects. But to the average resident, what they see it used for that affects them the most is plowing the roads.
And all because he asked for these tonight doesn't mean he's going to get them either.
Yeah.
When you see the whole plan, when Donna sends it to me and I'll put it together, then you'll have a whole spreadsheet and you'll see that, you know, we've asked for, you know, $2 million worth of things in year 1, and we just know we don't have that kind of money.
And so this is where you may split the difference. You might say, okay, truck's coming off of lease, we can afford to replace one of the dump trucks. There's requests for 2 of the smaller trucks. Let's pay cash for 1 of them. Then let's look in the out years and see, is there something else coming off the lease, maybe in 2 years, that payment will go away and we can get one of the other trucks done. You know, I've looked through his trucks recently, and I'd recommend for you to do so as well. And some of them are pretty damn crappy. Their time is come and gone, and they're still using them. So to lay eyes on these things, it'd be a good thing for you if Troy's willing to invite you up there. Go through these and see, you know, look at that purple truck. You know, they bought that used years and years ago, and you know, they said they've gotten their money's worth, but boy, it's time for it to go. And that's where you can get an appreciation for it. Unfortunately, you can't get all the taxpayers to come to, hey, let's come to Public Works, look at all our trucks and see why we need something. Some people wouldn't have the appreciation to do that, or the caring to they look at the bottom line and that's it. So that's why we take all these requests in,
Orlando.
and then we start juggling. There's some whoppers coming from the rec department this year, and
The school.
that's assuming this governor doesn't, or in his budget cut, local aid and things like that. And, because we depend on that year by year to help fund our budget. And some years they've threatened to cut a whole bunch or come up with some other crazy expenses, and you have to deal with that side of it as well. Troy, is there anything else we didn't cover in your
No, I
project?
think that's pretty much it, and that's pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, read through the packet and
Next Wednesday, we'll add Conservation Commission. It's not on your sheet because we went off of submissions we had from last year. So we'll add Conservation Commission to next week.
yep, sounds really good. Looking for my agenda and it's buried under all this paperwork.
The last item was review of ongoing projects.
I think we did that at the last meeting pretty well. Has anything changed?
No, the boiler here was actually replaced. So it's nice and toasty up here now. And it realized how inefficient it was until it's super efficient now. What a difference. I'm just looking over here, want to make sure I don't miss anything.
And no, from the firehouse side of things, the bunker gear was ordered several weeks ago. Usually takes 6 to 8 weeks to come in. So that's coming down the pike. The project to convert from the oil to the propane here at the firehouse is a springtime project. Not something we want to get to in the middle of the winter. And we'll get prices there's a whole bunch of different vendors involved. The tank suppliers, propane suppliers, the guy modifying the burner, and a few others. But that's a springtime thing.
I just wanted to ask about since we took some money out that we did have in the original plan for the building committee to have some money, and it was, I just kind of wonder what's the status of the building committee being seated, and are they going to need something sooner rather than later, because we don't have anything in the plan at all now for that.
I think there's a request in there in the school's request.
Okay.
I plan to call a meeting at the end of this month. Meeting time and availability for folks is slim in the month of January, February, and March. But I think we've narrowed down a date that doesn't have another meeting on top of it now. Just hard to come by. So, and then they would have to determine, if they've asked they want before that, or if it lands in CIP and it comes up later.
And if it's coming in kind of the middle of the year in terms of, they can't or don't want to wait till July 1, it turns into a Board of Finance thing of, do you have any money laying around to get them started? Evaluating what direction they're going to go.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to say, no, we gave it all to Troy.
I think putting it in this plan is probably the best option. By the time that board meets and really starts getting some concrete information, determining what they need, that, it being planned for in the next fiscal year would not be inappropriate.
I just feel like they've been, for various reasons, one of which is a pandemic, they've gotten off to a really slow start since the town meeting. And if we could sort of goose the process so it's not lethargic, that would be great.
But I think it's important to make sure we do it. to do it right, not fast. And so by the time they sit down and be able to have the discussions and gather the information that they need as a committee who hasn't even come together yet, to just
Right.
suddenly need money in a month from the Board of Finance, I'm not sure that falls under emergency. And so us planning for it in the next fiscal year allows them to plan for a July 1 start on something, if that's the direction that committee goes. I think them starting to have the conversations and determining what they need is the most important now.
All righty. Anything else we need to talk about? Get a meeting in a week, I believe, for the next crowd.
Oh, can I just say, no, this is a lot of new information, probably for Orlando and Carrie. And if your head feels like it's going to explode on night one, I think we've all been there. It's all right. And no bad, no question is too much. And I've been doing this for a couple of years and I find it very difficult to meet about this kind of information in this manner. And I'm not sure why. We're still looking at the same documents. It's just a different feel. It's nice to be able to have some of the visuals in front of us. I don't know if the rest of you agree. This is a tough one to do virtually.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
they said we're just reviewing requests, and then when we get through them all in 3 or 4 weeks, we just go down and start saying yay, nay, or push it out. And the school one, if you look through that packet yet, basically they have a lot of, they have a bunch, I won't say a lot, of maintenance issues at one or both schools. But where they're stuck is, what in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, are they going to be renovating the school? Are they going to be building a new school? Are they going to stay where they are? That you hate to do, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of maintenance for, ventilation and a few other things, for a school they're not going to be in. And he's detailed that fairly well in the booklet of, here's all these projects, but if we end up with a new school, we don't have to do any of these projects. But we can't push them off forever, and totally ignore it, let alone whatever any subsequent use of the buildings would be if they did build a new school. So that's kind of the big overall thing of what's going on with the school. You'll see a whole lot of requests coming from them because they have a lot of building to maintain, and so it gets very expensive.
Mhm.
And I love Phil's spreadsheet. I might adopt this new manner. I like it, that and his explanation better than our individual sheets. I don't know why. It's certainly easier to read.
It's colorful.
It is. Some of the notes behind me are, he comes in and we talk about how we can revamp the CIP plan sheets so that they work better. So maybe he'll have in his plan to do that.
Dude, can I move to adjourn?
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So
Second.
moved.
I'm sure we have a second in there somewhere.
Second.
All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Never hear an opposed to that one. So.
Bye, y'all.